Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the podcast Under Your Bed.
It's been a minute, guys. It's been a minute.
But either way, we are stoked because we got OG classic. We're talking about OG in the house with some Frankenstein coming at you from 1931. Woo! And if you don't know, you probably should. You've probably seen Frankenstein during Halloween. You know, Dr. Frankenstein, reanimates the dead body and brings life where life existed not before. and what will these people make of this new creature walking around? What kind of shenanigans will ensue? I don't know.
What shenanigans? It goes bad, guys. If you didn't already know, it goes bad.
I didn't want to spoil anything. It goes a little rough. Not great. All right. Anyways, you walk us through some of this cast here, Taylor. It's actually kind of got quite a few interesting people.
It definitely does, and I think if you're well versed in the monster universe, like the Universal movie monsters, then you're gonna be familiar with a lot of these people. Outside of this, they've all definitely done bigger projects, but I think if you're in this kind of genre, you're gonna have a lot of crossover with like Dracula or Bride of Frankenstein, obviously Invisible Man, like those kind of movies. So we do get some good crossover. So Dr. Henry Frankenstein is played by Colin Clive, who I think is probably best known from this. Also does a reoccurring part in Bride of Frankenstein, but he also was in the OG Jane Eyre, so good for him. Elizabeth, I am not as familiar with, to be honest. That is played by Mae Clark. The monster, the one and only, the legendary Boris Karloff, who you may know from, I don't know, projects like The Mummy, The Black Cat, or perhaps for less horror enthusiasts, he's the freaking Grinch in How the Grinch Stole Christmas. So
love it.
Come on now. Also, I've got to give a shout out to Dwight Fry, who's playing Fritz, because he also in like this same year was playing Renfield in Dracula, and I just love something about that. And also plays a different character in Bride of Frankenstein as well.
I like it. I like it a lot. Well, so this is directed by James Whale. And of course, that's why you're seeing, he's the showrunner. That's where you're getting some of these repeat customers and Bride of Frankenstein, and The Invisible Man, of course, was his movie. So, and then it's written by Mary Shelley. Oh, well, she wrote the book, obviously, and written for the screen with John L. Balderston, and then edited by Clarence Colster, which I thought there were some good things happening for this classic, style cinema. Composition, Bernard Kahn, and cinematography. I
mean, he did like Gone with the Wind. It's like, what else do you really need to your credit?
Yeah, that's so spot on. It's true. I mean, and I thought it was good. Like, there's such a unique quality to those old Universal horror films, and it relies so heavily on the compositions.
So heavily, yes.
So then cinematography coming at you from Arthur Eaton. Again, some interesting things kind of happening with camera for such a classic film, creating some standard stuff that gets repeated throughout other movies.
He's got some great credits too. I mean, like freaking Casablanca. Like, again, it's just like you get that one iconic credit, but he also has like Maltese Falcon and some other huge ones. So it's very cool to see the beginnings of these guys and then where this like led them in their careers.
Yes. And effects kind of taking this all home. And there were some great effects in here, those kind of old school Hollywood style sets and effects happening by a variety of people, but Jack Pierce did a lot of the makeup there.
Yeah, I gotta give the makeup credit to Jack Pierce, because that is the most iconic imagery. I mean, that if you don't know Frankenstein, Frankenstein solely from Jack Pierce's makeup, because that image has like stood the test of time, which is wild.
Yeah. Like when you think of Frankenstein costumes today, it all roots back directly to this movie.
100%.
So that's super cool to see some lasting legacy. This is traditional Universal monster horror film. That comes with a lot of preconceived ideas, but these are some of the movies that really like laid the groundwork for the horror films to come. And I thought there was a lot of, at times, perhaps kind of groundbreaking film work. But then also there's just so much to savor, and just that like that golden age of like Hollywood that really brought the silver screen to life, you know, and you can just picture what this would have been like sitting in an audience, you know, back in the 30s. So I think it's just a real blast watching. But, you know, what were some of the things that you enjoyed, you know, given what it is?
I mean, you highlighted a lot of it actually already, which is awesome. But just thinking about the opening, which again, we're in the spoiler free. I don't think this is a big spoiler because it's the first 30 seconds of the movie. But you've got someone coming out letting you know how scary it's going to be. And I can imagine at the time seeing Boris Karloff come out in that makeup for the first time must have just stunned the pants off of some people.
Yeah.
Like, but it holds though. It holds. Actually, I still think the makeup looks fantastic. He sells every bit of it. I think he's just as influential as the makeup that he's wearing is, because without him selling that character, I don't know if it'd quite have the same iconic status that it has, but it does have that iconic status. It's really beautiful with those painted backdrops. There is just something about those that you can't replicate today. It could never look as good as it does. It's some very cool set design to especially enhance that. And so it's very pretty to watch. And to me, I think it's really pretty to watch, to be honest.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, all of this, I can't think of a single moment that wasn't filmed on a soundstage, right? It must have all been filmed out of a Hollywood studio lot that I can think of.
I think maybe the hill part they had to go somewhere, but that's it. I think that he had to walk uphill for something, but I think that is the only thing as far as I'm aware of.
Okay. Obviously the moment with the kid by the lakeside.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
so there's like two.
Some walking through some village and stuff like that. So yeah, there's probably a couple moments, but you know, again,
primarily yes.
Primarily most of this filmed on a Hollywood soundstage, and to bring, you know, a blank canvas like a Hollywood studio to life the way they did, I think is brilliant. You know, like you're talking about, that's where this movie probably really shines in my mind, is just these beautiful sets where you can really like control the light the way you want to. So at the end of the day, you really see the vision that these directors have. And then kind of letting the characters play the action out on screen and letting that tell the story. I know James Whale, the director, had a background coming from the stage. So it's really fun kind of seeing, you know, that I kind of expand into this like 3D space, if you will, as opposed to like kind of staring at a stage from one direction.
Totally.
But also seeing like letting action play out on screen in ways, and like letting characters use these sets and to their, you know, as completely and fully as possible is great.
Yeah, actually, you just touched on something that I think the acting is really good. I think what's unfortunate is that the writing isn't quite as good as some of the acting is. Like, I'm sure we'll get more into it with the spoiler stuff, but our leading lady really has nothing to offer, very unfortunately. But it's not about. Lady? Yeah, right. Yeah, right. Honestly, she might as well not be in the movie. It wouldn't really make a difference, but
Yeah.
everyone is committed to what they're doing, including her. Everyone is selling the character that they have as best as they can. And
Yeah.
I do really appreciate that in a film from the 30s, which can sometimes, the acting can feel a little hokey depending on what you're watching.
Right.
I don't feel like that with this movie at all.
It's interesting. I kind of thought a couple times the acting felt hokey, but it was a result of the writing. You're right. I had made notes about, why is there all this like repetitive like screenwriting that I just
Yeah.
you can't do anything with that as an actor. So um, at least they weren't able to do anything with it. So
They did their best. I
they,
fully believe that they ran with the material they had.
yeah. But beyond that, I thought camera was fun to watch. Just seeing again that like standard Hollywood formula play out. I think is very foundational for filmmakers to be able to experience, to learn those strong fundamentals. But then it breaks a lot of the molds that like you've seen up to that time in cinema. Camera being kind of playful and going handheld, and a lot of like really quick cuts.
And some
times.
tracking. I was surprised. A couple, not long, but a couple for
Yeah.
the time, longer shots than I would anticipate.
Yeah. So, even from like, the technical side of camera and edit, I thought was pretty inventive for the time and still holds today. It actually is like a fairly, without a lot of plot development. It's pretty like well-paced film, I would say.
Totally agree. Actually, just rewatching it this morning, I thought the exact same thing. I was pretty surprised. I mean, it is a very short runtime, which I have to say, given, I know we've talked about this before, and films are starting to move back into the hour and a half slot.
Yeah.
But it was kind of nice coming from like a couple movies I had watched recently that all ran like 2-some hours. Like it was really refreshing to watch like an hour and 10-minute film and be like, they fit the plot. Yes, could it have used the extra 20 minutes to build some character stuff? Sure. But it never was bogged down in that, which in a way I do appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. So bottom line here, Taylor, monsters under the bed. Let's start with scariness. Is probably the easier one.
Yeah, for sure.
Out of 4 monsters under your bed, how scary is this flick?
I mean, if you know the story at all, you know that the monster is not really the scary part. It's the people. And in that respect, that is still a very relevant thing to be talking about. So in that respect, I will give it the 1 because the concept is there. I don't want to brush it to a 0 because it does create very good atmosphere and stuff. But yeah, for your modern day horror audience, is it going to be anything that you're going to like, but there is a part in it, and we're not going to talk about it yet, but there's a part in it that has me hesitant to show like my nephew. And in that, I do think like there is some still legitimate scariness to it that I'm hesitant to show it to a child.
Yeah, agreed. I will also give it a 1 monster out of 4 for scariness. I think this is possibly a really fun place to start for kids to like watch something like scary, not scary, with some, bad old movie action, like fighting people off with torches on fire. And there's a couple like, I guess, dead bodies. Well, actually, some of the opening stuff is actually a little intense opening. If
it's my only thing of being like, I'm not totally confident. I'm pretty confident that a kid, at least a kid ranging from 8 to 10, should be okay watching it. But then you're also like,
I'm not going that far to like give age recommendations. I'm leaving that up to you, parents. But anyways, let's go for overall rating of the movie out of 4 stars. Where are you on this movie?
This is such a tough one because what we look for now in a film is like, what is the underarching theme? Like how confident is the acting? What's going on with the camera? And you're looking for all this innovation. So I think when you're always looking at an old film in a way, it's really hard to not be like, well, I'm going to rate it lower because now we expect more. There's been an evolution.
Yeah.
We anticipate, again, greater thematic stuff going on through your film, or greater gore, or greater scares, or whatever. But there is something to be said for like this being one of the most influential and long-lasting films ever made. How iconic Frankenstein is. I literally just bought pillow covers with Frankenstein and the Bride of Frankenstein, and I feel really wrong giving it anything less than a 4. It feels like not right, but there's this like, I have this tiny little pull that tells me maybe it's not quite a 4 in my personal book, but I have to just give it overall what it did for cinema, the iconicness, how gorgeous it is, the good acting, this amazing effects, like the beautiful backdrops. I think I have to give it a 4 because of that. If it was just strictly my personal rating, it might be more of a 3.5. But I will give it for this. For its overall cinematic value to the world of horror, I'm going to give it a 4. What's your take on that? Am I being too generous this time? I don't know.
Ooh, no, I think that's great. And I'm kind of happy that this is one of the maybe rare times where I'm coming under you, where I'm going to rate it a 3.
I knew you would.
Because, all right, I agree. I always like the idea of kind of rating them next to films of the time, because it's not fair to compare it to a movie from 2023. That being said, knowing I never read the original book, but knowing a bit about the story, I was a little surprised by
you are right,
choices that were made.
Yep.
Like
you are right, yep.
And I didn't think that certain themes hit as strongly as I thought they could have. I thought that character development wasn't strong. And I was just sort of wanting for certain things, even though technically the movie was very well made. And I thought the acting was very good. But the writing also left me wanting, and then the story itself was just, like, come on, what happened? But it also, like, it is iconic. You can't take it away. So I can't tip it any lower than a 3 for sure. So 3
no,
it is.
That's a real, honestly, I think that's genuinely one of the tougher ones. But the points that you hit on, I full-heartedly agree with you 100%. Like, 100% agree. We'll get into that in the spoiler section. But yes, totally agree with you on this one.
All right. So as Taylor said, we will get to all of the nitty gritty in the spoiler section. Hang tight. We got a drink for you and some more review.
That's right.
Welcome to the podcast Under Your Bed. There'll be drinks, critique, and perhaps a few murders. You're all invited, but once the podcast has begun, there's no way out. The ghosts are waiting, so won't you join me for the podcast Under Your Bed?
It's alive! That felt pretty good. That was a pretty good performance.
Good. Yeah, I'm definitely getting into the next horror slot with Ari Aster with that performance for
Sign
sure.
her up, ladies and gents. We forgot to introduce ourselves at the top. All y'all sitting across from me is Taylor, your hostess. She's our
guys, it's been a month
zombie
off. I'm
Frankenstein
sorry.
impersonator. And I am your host, CJ. And together we are the podcast Under Your Bed. Hey.
This is what happens when you take like a month off to enjoy part of the beginning of your summer. And we had a wedding of our cousin to go to. And so we were doing things and active and out there, but it does mean our podcasting skills may have waned slightly.
Hey, time heals all, but not our
We're
abilities.
back, guys. We're back.
All right, y'all. Anyways, we got a cocktail for you. It's called the Frankenstein Reviver. This is by Pillsbury. Like the Doughboy
Like
company.
the Doughboy. Yep, Pillsbury like the Doughboy.
All right, thanks, Pillsbury. Anyways, this is a gin cocktail. It's got some melon and orange liqueur. It's got a little fresh lemon juice and simple syrup. It's pretty simple. It's pretty much all even parts except for that lemon juice and simple syrup coming in a little later. And, you can make a nice little green cocktail and drink it while you watch Frankenstein. It's okay.
The color is there. I will say, if we're gonna do a Corpse Reviver type of style, we did do the Corpse Reviver 2 with Night of the Living Dead, and if you haven't listened to that episode or had that drink, highly recommend both. I think I'm gonna go with that for my Reviver style drinks compared to this, but I appreciate the color and the effort to integrate.
Yeah, I do. My taste, y'all. Up the gin, a little less sweet.
Yes.
More alcohol, less sweet. That usually is where I land. But besides that, it's going to get me through this episode. But Taylor, I've forgotten this movie plot. Help me. What happened?
I can cover that. I can let you know what happened.
All right.
So guys, if you don't know, this is where we get into we go through the whole film for you, and then afterward we'll dissect it in a more in-depth way, in a very spoiler way. So if for some reason you have not seen Frankenstein, turn this off now, take a pause, go watch it, come back and listen. But if you need a refresher, we're here for you. And also, just for the sake of clarity and understanding here, I'm going to refer to Frankenstein as the monster, the creature. Yes, there's heavy debate on Dr. Frankenstein is the only Frankenstein. However, I did rewatch it today, and he does call the monster Frankenstein. He gives it his name. I would have died on my deathbed going, it's just the monster, it's just the creature, it's not Frankenstein. I was wrong. I admit it, but I just want to clarify. I understand the difference, but I am, for the sake of clarity, in reading this, to just call him the monster and the creature, okay?
Hey,
so
he can
don't
name
come at
whatever
me.
he wants, huh? All right.
Don't come for me. I know what I'm talking about. Relatively. Okay, so we open with Dr. Frankenstein and his assistant Fritz collecting corpses in an attempt to create a human.
Yummy.
Since the two have been so good. Since the two have been unsuccessful in finding a brain, Fritz heads to a medical school for a specimen. Fritz unknowingly steals an abnormal brain belonging to a criminal after he drops the appropriately titled normal brain. I really love those labels.
Yeah.
I kind of want that.
That is great.
So good. Meanwhile, Frankenstein's fiancée, Elizabeth, expresses concerns about his mental state to her friend Victor and the doctor's former teacher, Dr. Waldman, who they also stole the brain from. The group discusses his increasingly unhinged behavior, including his focus on recreating life, and decide that they need to travel to his lab. I do love this part. They arrive during a massive storm, and though initially shunned by Fritz and the doctor, they're eventually let in time to see the experiment commence. The doctor raises his stitched together corpse through an opening in the roof, which allows this electrical device that's attached to be struck by lightning. Once the creature is lowered, it begins to move, hence it's alive. Frankenstein's father and the village become increasingly impatient about his impending wedding, but Frankenstein instead focuses time on teaching the monster. Dr. Waldman insists that the monster is an abomination due to the origin of the brain, but Frankenstein believes in the creature's potential. Frankenstein appears to be correct as the child is, or the child, nope, let's try that again. No kid yet. All right, let's try that. Frankenstein appears to be correct as the monster is childlike, attempting to reach for the sun, and he's so cute when he does it. The monster displays a fear of fire, allowing Fritz the opportunity to antagonize and torment it. Fritz's bad karma, however, catches up with him, and the monster overtakes and kills him. Frankenstein... He totally deserved it. I am not on Fritz's side at all. Do not feel bad. Frankenstein and Dr. Waldman do not agree with us, though, and decide that they need to destroy the creature. Before they can, though, a fight ensues between the three, and it's broken up eventually when the creature is rendered unconscious via an injection. Exhausted, Frankenstein eventually collapses, causing his newly arrived father and Elizabeth to take him home. After some much-needed rest, Frankenstein and Elizabeth decide to move forward with their wedding. Meanwhile, as promised, Dr. Waldman moves forward with killing the creature by plans of dissecting it. I know, it was confusing and a little weird. However, the creature awakens before he can begin and immediately strangles and kills the doctor. Oof. The creature escapes. I know, right? But also kind of deserved. The creature escapes the tower and heads towards the village where he meets a young girl named Maria. Oh, Maria. Maria is kind to the creature, and the two play a game throwing flowers into the water. When the creature runs out of flowers, he decides to throw Maria into the water, clearly not understanding the consequences, and Maria subsequently drowns. Oh, so sad. On the wedding day, Victor tells Frankenstein about Waltman's death, during which time the creature scares Elizabeth and once again flees. Maria's father carries her dead body into town, and an angry mob forms attempting to find the creature. During the search, the monster knocks Frankenstein unconscious and takes him to a windmill. The horde catches up with the two as Frankenstein awakens. The two of them then fight, and the creature throws Frankenstein off the building. However, he is magically saved by a moving windmill blade that takes him to the bottom, and he is taken home while the villagers, because they suck, set the windmill on fire, trapping the creature inside the burning building. The film abruptly ends with Baron Frankenstein discussing his son's recovery over drinks with the staff. And that is the end of
Happy
Frankenstein.
ending.
Happy ending for everyone.
All right, Taylor. Story.
All right, we're going to come in probably a little hot, but there will be ebbs and flows here for sure.
As y'all heard in that spoiler story plot review, it's maybe got some problems. And I think for a couple of reasons. I think one, like when you watch this movie, you have some preconceived notions of like who Frankenstein is, or the monster of Frankenstein is, and what the story is supposed to be about. And that sort of subverted my expectations by kind of not really touching on closely, at least, some of the themes that I thought would have been a little more apparent. And the first one being, this idea that the monster is just this misunderstood creature, and the real monster is actually this mob. But in this movie, they don't really linger on that theme very much, and so basically the creature has this childlike quality, makes a childlike mistake and drowns a girl, and then it creates this mob, rightfully so, that's out for some justice or vengeance, and so while maybe things get taken out of hand, it's sort of like there's like too much justification, I think, in their vengeance and their bloodlust. Whereas, my understanding of the book, and this is coming from someone that hasn't read the book, excuse me, y'all, but it sounded more to me like the the mob mentality kind of, and that fear of the unknown is what sort of drove the mob to murder something that's just not understood, being this like creature that was created by someone other than God.
Yeah, 100%. And I also, okay, first off, I'm just going to poke a tiny plot hole because I have to.
Yeah.
It does not make sense to me at all that Maria's dad finds her drowned and it makes the assumption she was murdered. I'm like, what? How did you
that was
what
another
are you
one.
talking about? How did you get to murder for sure? She was drowned, sure, but you also live near a body of water, and why does your kid not know how to swim? I'm just going to throw it out there. I'm just going to throw it out there first. But I agree. I think it's set up in that way, and he's obviously the more sympathetic, just because, again, I think the acting from Boris Karloff is so good and so compelling that you're automatically drawn to him versus the angry horde that's developing of unknown people. But I agree, they don't really make it about, there's no justice correlated to Frankenstein. It's all taken out on the monster.
Yeah, it is. And
even though it's his fault.
And so sort of paralleling the underdeveloped story are these underdeveloped characters and character arcs, perhaps. And, where, and I was trying to decide whether this was intentional or not, where I really felt a lot of times that the monster of Dr. Frankenstein was the most developed character in a way, and
totally agree.
And that probably would lend itself to that like original theme coming from the book. But it sort of felt like missed opportunity instead of an intentional choice. Curious how it read to you.
Yeah, it's a hard one to tell because I feel like, and I don't know how much of that was director versus studio influence or the change in the writing, but there is like an entire theme of justice, like there's justice served by the end of the book where you're not getting that in this. It's a horde of people coming after this thing that didn't do anything on purpose. Like, okay, he killed Fritz, but and the doctor. But to be fair, Fritz was antagonizing and torturing him the entire time, and the doctor was literally going to dissect him. So I'm going to call those justified. To be honest, I'm going to call those justified. But especially with the kid, it's a total accident. And actually, she might also feel like a more developed character in her 2-minute screen time than some of our other main people. But I do, just because we're already there, I do just want to touch on it. But it's very sweet when she doesn't, there's nothing that phases her about his face. She's like, come play with me. And it's just this really sweet moment that obviously ends in pure devastation. But I do it's hard to tell, is it a product of its time where they were uncomfortable with killing off Frankenstein's fiance or having anything bad happen to him? I think the original idea was that Dr. Frankenstein was going to die, but I believe that got nixed at the end. And I think it's really just a product of its time and not being willing to, they pushed hard boundaries with child killing, but not hard enough with a fully nuanced story about this lynch mob and about Frankenstein and getting no comeuppance. So that obviously felt really flat, but I feel like it's more of a product of its time.
All right. Well, that's fair. Another kind of shortcoming in the story arc was this love line, B story thing. I honestly felt like the whole movie could have done without it. There's, the wife of Dr. Frankenstein, who plays fiance, soon to be wife, who has no influence on the story at all. Other than at one point, the monster coming into her room where she gets to play this damsel in distress, but it lasts all of 30 seconds and the monster leaves. So I just, what did it add? It didn't add anything to me. And then
No, it just moved his character from like one place to another. That was really like the only purpose.
yeah, like in
that
physical
it
space,
served.
like that's
yes,
it.
physically. Yeah,
Yeah.
sorry, I should have clarified. Physically moving him from one point to another point was about all we got there. And that's where that falls flat, because if they had gone with this story where Dr. Frankenstein abandons this creature, and then the comeuppance is that his wife is murdered by the thing he created and abandoned, there would be like a full story there.
Yeah.
But because he just goes in the room and then he just leaves the room, there isn't really any reason for her to be there, and there's no pushing of the story with her either.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now, and then also I think the ending is worth talking about in terms of the story. Like, how do we feel about the way the movie ends?
It's so bizarre. I mean, it just is. And to be honest, Dracula has also a very abrupt type ending where you're just kind of sat there going, oh, the movie, we're done? I guess we're done now. This just stopped. This ended. Because it's like you don't even get Frankenstein or Elizabeth at the end, really. It's just the dad, like, he's fine. Let's have a drink. That's the end.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it ends with the dad, right? Like that's it outside the room. So this story arc of like the monster ends with him just dying. Okay, I get it.
Which that's iconic. Like, I will say that is a great. The set is great.
Yes.
The story is great at that point.
Yes.
But to go from this super, we're up, everyone's stressed out, the monster's stuck in a burning building
scene, and then immediately to Dr. Frankenstein recovering in the hospice or something, and
just at home. He's not even in a hospital.
Yeah.
He's just at home.
And to be married and his dad celebrating with champagne is just really silly.
No lessons learned. Everyone had a great time at the end of it. Everyone is just fine.
We created life and
destroyed it.
Destroyed it. We maintain the power. All right, we win. I thought that was interesting. And, I guess that being said, like this whole theme of, defying God and creating life yourself is for the 30s probably a very like sticky subject to approach, right? And so maybe there are a lot of like hesitations, and they want that sort of like clean like story of, well, hey, maybe we shouldn't tell people that this is okay, that it's blasphemous or something. I don't know. Maybe some of that was playing into these decisions, but.
Oh, I'm sure. And I mean, there's always this hesitancy, especially at that time, to really push for killing off like main characters or people who are not outwardly villainous looking. So I think that definitely played into it. But then I also think they pushed as far as they could with some stuff and had to make, concessions in other areas. I think is a huge part of this studio influence, especially. We already know it's really prevalent now, but I feel like it was even worse back then. So there's not like a lot of room when you're working with like Universal Pictures at this time.
Yeah. So obviously lots of places for improvement. Is there anything else before we start praising the movie for the things we loved and what didn't work well? Anything else that we want to like rip apart real quick? How about
maybe the censorship that obviously doesn't occur. Thankfully, the cut has been restored appropriately, but the censorship that has occurred over the years, which is kind of funny because we just talked about how much the studio influences and censors and does whatever.
Yeah.
But when this went out more mainstream, especially with rewatches and stuff, there was a big push not only to get rid of Frankenstein's line of it's like, now I know what it feels like to be God. I think
Yeah.
he might even say I am God, but I think that part is lost to the annals of history. I think that one's gone completely. Can't get it back. I think. I could be misremembering, but I know they cut out that line when they were doing rewatches, and they also actually cut out where the creature throws Maria into the water. You just get this weird aftermath, like, right? And there's just a very weird, like, break.
No kid all of a sudden in some waves in the water.
Yeah, and then you get the shot of her being carried, but it's very confusing because all of a sudden they're playing Now the Kid's Dead. So I think it's interesting that the morality police still deemed it for quite some time like unacceptable and had to make these big changes, and it's outrageous. Really, in hindsight.
Yeah, interesting. I hadn't read that. So I guess one more place to sort of poke at real quick is the writing.
Sure.
Unfortunately, there were times in the dialogue that just felt forced because the writing was not great. I'm trying to think back to a moment or two. Like, I think there was a time. This might have been before, when Dr. Frankenstein's talking to his former professor, and he's like, I built this with my own hands. With my own hands, like he repeats it. You're like, did we not just hear you fucking say this? Like, okay.
I do kind of love the manic delivery, though. I do like the manic delivery, but I agree. It's not great. It's not great writing. I think that's actually an example of somebody taking something and just running with it and being like, okay, well, this is what I'm doing. So,
well, it seemed like this sort of like motif of like repeating a line for emphasis. And
yes,
many times. Maybe this is like part of James Whale coming from the stage. Maybe that's like a little older classic style of stage writing, and something that like sort of translated to future film viewers in a not so great way. So, outside of that, though, the acting was good, largely, even though the characters weren't very well developed, and Boris leading the way. So,
oh, God, he's just the best because he also is just a really nice guy on top of it, which just makes it even better. He just was like an all-star in all aspects of being a human, so you just kind of have to love that. I mean, he was like a late in life actor, and they literally he was like, I think when he got found for this movie was wearing like a nice suit, and he's like, I'm dressed nicely. Like, you're ugly, you'll work really good for this movie. And so he made like a joke about, he was just, that's how he got the role, is just being ugly enough or whatever when he thought he was looking good. But he's just was a very sweet guy, especially when working with the kiddo, making sure that she was good. I heard nothing but good things when I was reading about this. His daughters said lovely things. So just on top of being a genuinely good person, then he pulls out just this beautiful performance with no dialogue. Yeah. And manages to be the most sympathetic character in the entire thing.
Yeah, that is so spot on. He becomes endearing, and I think it maybe starts with, is it Crits? What's the Fritz?
Frickin'
Fritz, right? Like, you start feeling bad for the monster once Fritz is like antagonizing the poor bastard.
Yeah, and he's scared. He's just scared.
Yeah. So all of a sudden you've built some empathy for this guy and this creature, and then you start seeing these like softer sides, right? Like playing with the kid. He tries to get the sun. Yeah, getting the sun, and to your point, like the sort of like, it's a lot of like facial qualities, I think, and just kind of like soft demeanor about him, even despite being like bulking and kind of shuffling about and grunting, like,
and the enlarged forehead piece, like the big prosthetics. Like, it's pretty amazing that you facially can shine through all that makeup and prosthetic work, and still there's just something, like you said, you just like empathize with him almost immediately, and I think that's really him at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's awesome. But then, besides him, I just maybe just because the characters were so lacking, I can't like really say. Maybe Dr. Frankenstein was an
I do like
interesting
Dr. Frankenstein.
performance.
Yeah.
But outside of that, it just kind of was. There wasn't anything that was like really shining out, mostly because the characters were flat. Let me know if you disagree.
I wish Dr. Frankenstein had a little bit more, like, again, thematically going for him, because I actually thought he did his best to convey, like, maybe more true to source material, in that he's very manic and caught up in this situation, realizes things are kind of over his head and he can't handle it. He heads out. He's kind of a different person once he's out of this, like, situation he's completely stuck himself into, where I wish that they had played with it more. Obviously, is the dynamic between the creator and creation. That didn't really get played up too much, aside from like the beginning and the end. Essentially, we didn't really get a lot of nuance in the middle, which is unfortunate, because I think he could have played it out better if there was like the writing to back it up, because I think he can hit the peaks and valleys really well, and he does do it. And I actually love his manic performance at the beginning, and he's much more grounded at the end. So he clearly can do it. He just didn't get the material he needed to like take that character like all the way.
Yeah. So let's talk about that manic moment of creating the monster that Dr. Frankenstein has brought to life.
That's a whole, like, it's such a moment.
You could do a whole podcast episode just on that scene. It is so iconic. It has just echoed throughout, film history. But to start, the set's just fun. It's just the classic Hollywood, like Tesla coils sparking and like beakers bubbling and lightning, and you're in a giant Gothic castle, lightning striking. I don't know if there's waves crashing, but it feels like there should be.
Feels like it.
But, at the end of the day, it's just really fun. It feels cold and spooky, and a place where someone could go to lose their mind, which breeds life to this Dr. Frankenstein character. And then, of course, we bring life where life was not before. Walk me through the moment. What do you love? Man. What do you not like? Is there anything you don't like about it?
In that scene, honestly, not much, other than, I hate to say it, the peanut gallery doesn't need to be there.
I was going to say the same thing. It's like, okay,
they didn't need to be there.
Sit here and watch nicely, and
also, there's no reactions from them after, which is something that really that still really bothers me. No one is like, first off, no one is perturbed by the idea that you could just bring someone back and make a person out of many people. Like, nobody is bothered by that. That already annoys me. And then the fact that no one is mind is blown. They just go about their business after. The next chat is with the dad. Just very chill.
Yeah, now that you have this monster walking about, let's go have some lunch.
That's a bit wild, to be fair. But that's honestly my only criticism of that scene, because as you noted, that set was so iconic. I think it was used all the way, like reused for different purposes all the way up until like 80 something, or maybe it was the late 70s. But point being, they had like a 40-year lifespan, a lot of the equipment that was used, because it looked so perfect. It looked exactly like what you'd expect a mad scientist lab to look like.
Right, absolutely. It was super fun. And, there were lots of these brilliant sets throughout the movie. I think probably, again, the next most iconic is going to be the windmill scene at the end, which I thought was really great use of kind of large scale models for like the extreme wide shots of the windmill on fire with the little mob below, and I assumed was a painted glass backdrop there.
I think so.
Yeah, and then kind of the closer shots with the real life mob. Just a really big Hollywood studio set, and again, one of those beautiful painted backdrops. And real fire. So that was
yeah.
a lot of fun and great effects when the monster gets crushed by the log and it's on fire.
Yeah.
I was pretty impressed.
And
Boris took a hit.
He also carried the doctor. Like, I guess this actually led to some serious back issues, like moving forward. And I guess there's like it's a rumor. I'm not sure how like confirmed or not it is, but there was a rumor that James Whale was like a little jealous that Boris Karloff was getting so much attention and kind of the primary focus. So he made him do it maybe more times than was necessary. And he was carrying a full body weight. And he had those big giant boots and stuff too. So it wasn't exactly like he was walking evenly. So he had many back surgeries after that. So,
no. Yeah, well, that's brutal. But at the end of the day, the sets looked really nice.
It looked good, though.
Boris did a great job, and all those things aside, we never saw it come across on screen. So,
yeah, my goodness. But I am obsessed with the backdrops, and it's not just because it does give you this old Hollywood feel that does elicit this feeling in me that I really do love, but also I just think they are particularly beautiful in this film and really well utilized. And then I don't know, maybe you'll be able to talk more on like logistically how this works, but I felt like with the backdrops and the way they designed a lot of the sets, in particular the lab, it made it look like there was these like long corridors, I think by slanting some of I'm sure it's more optical illusion type stuff. And I'm not smart enough to know how that works, but I thought that was very cool.
Yeah, they call it forced perspective. And, it's simply the idea that, when you look like at a city or something, or like the buildings that are farther away get smaller, right? The mountains that are farther away get smaller. So they just build models to scales that match how far they're supposed to be away. So if you're building a model of a city, like the buildings close are big, and then they start doing smaller buildings behind it, and it kind of forces that perspective, which is probably what's going on there. But that being said, there's also a lot of like impressionistic styles happening throughout this, very chiaroscuro notes coming from like Nosferatu and things like that. So
it made me think of Cabinet of Dr. Caligari, which is way more exaggerated than this is, but it made me think like those slanted sets in particular. That is the first thing I thought of was Dr. Caligari.
Well, I think one of a great moment to like dissect is actually Frankenstein's Reveal. It's really interesting because he walks backwards through the door. The first time you see him is backwards. So crazy. It's sort of like out of place. He's almost silhouetted, and you're like just waiting for this reveal. Like, what is this? Who is this?
Yes.
And then the turn and the reveal, and it's edited together with these quick cuts from medium, close, extreme close up. And like that was super new for the time. And then also that motif was repeated for the reveal of the Invisible Man, the exact same quick sequence when you first see the Invisible Man. That medium shot, close up, extreme close up, very fast paced, bum, bum, bum. So it's kind of, really kind of pushing the style a little bit. But when you see Frankenstein, back to the point when he's walking backwards to the door, it's this like very like crooked entryway. Yeah. There's these heavy shadows cast along, and he's silhouetted. And it's very reminiscent of Dr. Caligari.
What kind of reveal shot starts moving with the person backwards? It's just so literally walking backwards. It's not just that they are turned around, they're walking backward. And what I love so much about that is if it didn't land, it would have hit the floor so hard, but it works perfectly. It looks amazing. It's sold by Karloff. It's sold by the makeup. It's sold by the set design, the camera work. They nailed it in a big way.
There's so much suspense to it because there's this like dead body that is the monster, and then it's become animated, and all you see, night
Just
it
the
comes
hand,
alive as
yeah.
the hand move. You know, I don't even know if you maybe see the chest breathe. I can't recall, but
Hardly at all.
he
Hardly at
doesn't
all.
sit up. You don't get the reveal right there, and then he's gone for a little period of time. And the next time you see him, he comes through backwards. You're like, I want to see. And then
He
boom,
left you
there it
wanting,
is.
which
Yeah.
the anticipation build up in that is very well executed, I must say.
Yeah,
It's really good.
Gotta hand it to them. And you know, I don't know if you took better notes on the music, but it again, like, just one of those moments where that music's kind of like playing with you know, helping build some suspense for you.
It absolutely does. And I do appreciate that. I think because previously, I think, or it was the same year, I can't remember which came first, to be honest, bad on me. But with Dracula, it used so many classic movie pieces and that, or classic music pieces, and that's fine. But I really appreciate that I wasn't listening to the music in this and recalling something else I had seen it in or thought about because it was a pre-existing piece of music. As far as I'm aware of, hopefully I'm not wrong saying this, it was all composed for this, I believe. If I'm wrong, sorry. But it definitely didn't distract. It added really well. And I think sometimes, like we talked about Creature from the Black Lagoon, it can be so overwhelming at times. And I felt like Frankenstein never felt like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. It was there and aided at times, but it was largely like subtle and not forced. It didn't feel forced.
Yeah, it was like da-na-na! Like it wasn't like that.
Yeah, it wasn't trying to like force an emotion that didn't exist.
Yeah,
I guess is maybe a way to put it. I appreciated that. You know, what else was kind of like really working for you that we hadn't touched on yet?
Maria. I was like, I know I'm missing something big, but what is it? And we like kind of touched on it, but didn't really get into it. So first I just want to say that scene again, very touching at the start, and it's so sad. It's very similar for me of Night of the Living Dead being like, I just want a different outcome. Like I don't want it to go bad as I'm watching it over and over happen.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know, there's so much to unpack with that scene, to be honest. Like there's the emotional element to it, the story element to it. There's it's pretty crazy to have done that in the 30s, the shot after. So however you want to start with that, we can, but man, there's a lot to unpack in that tiny little scene. There's so much going on.
Maria being the kid.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what was immediately apparent to me is like this sharp contrast from this, you know, chiaroscuro, impressionistic, dark castle environment, and then moving to this beautiful seaside, lakeside,
little cottage thingy,
outdoors. We're not on a set anymore. It's daytime.
Flowers,
no storm.
kittens.
Yeah. So automatically it's just like softer and brighter and happier. And you really start feeling like, oh, this character, this monster is more than, you know, what you might have been led to
more
believe.
Than the darkness.
Yeah. And yeah, it's a super sweet scene. I think it sort of happens pretty abruptly. There's a pretty sharp spin to it, but it all like works. And I think just watching the reactions that Boris plays out on screen are pretty priceless. They're, you know, so innocent and childlike, you know. I like it. Just like, what happened? I don't know what to do. I'm gonna run away.
There's such a shift in all of it because he like comes upon this kid, and all he's been met with prior to this point is like disdain and torture, and because you got Fritz torturing him, the doctor calling him an abomination from the get. Frankenstein's really the only person who gave him any kind of kindness, but then he immediately abandons him when anything goes sideways. So he's essentially ditched by his creator. This is the first first time he comes across anybody showing any bit of kindness. And it's great that it's a kid, that there's just no preconceived notions of what this person should and shouldn't look like, and an immediate kindness, and I'm going to play with you. And he's very sweet in that scene, and them throwing the flowers. It's just this really beautiful moment before, then he gets confused. And, well, if I don't have any flowers, I'll just throw her. They float. Everybody's floating. It's fine. Like,
Yeah,
it's okay.
right?
And then obviously it goes very, very badly. But it's so heartbreaking. It's such a heartbreaking scene.
Yeah, it did hurt. It hurt
Yes.
to watch. Man, and
More
and
because
then-
it's gonna go so bad for him almost. I feel like that's it. I feel bad saying that. The child death, I'm kind of like, well, but like, I'm like, oh no, this is the beginning of the end for him, that he's made this horrific move. And I will say, the dad carrying her into town while that celebration is going on is so, wow, what a gut punch of a tracking shot, and watching everybody's reactions as they realize he's carrying a dead child. And man, give that kid some freaking credit, because she didn't move. I'm very impressed.
That is a great point. Not something I considered, but I completely agree with the emotional impact of that moment. It is dark and heavy, and I mean, you need some motivation to create a mob. That pretty much did it there. So, so there's quite a few moments that are actually like pretty gruesome, and that being one of them, carrying the dead child through that jovial celebration. But then also the opening of Dr. Frankenstein and his Quasimodo buddy Fritz digging up graves. That was really dark, and and then they go to
very dark.
They take like the hanged person off of the like light pole or whatever it is, and that was pretty brutal.
It's a grim opener to be like, you're in for some dark business coming up, though I do think there is like a little bit of humor, and not maybe intentional, in that he makes Fritz do all the physical activities. I was like, come on, man, that doesn't seem right. The guy is a cane. Like, you're making him crawl through windows, climb up a big pole. I also did think it was funny that they got the guy who had been hung or hanged, I don't know what the situation was, down, and they're like, oh, his neck is broken. And I just was sat there going, yeah, duh.
No,
of course it is. Of course it is. How about that?
I love it.
But yeah, it is bleak, especially when you start with the mourners at the beginning, and they're all deeply upset about the death of this person, and then they go and immediately grave rob.
Yeah.
Bad karma, man.
Yeah, that scene right off the bat was like, what's the old movie 12 Deadly Sins or something? Like, when you see the I don't know why I'm forgetting what it's called, but it's something like that. But anyways, like, it was so reminiscent of those just old, like, Russian, like, very what's the word I'm looking for? What's that era of film?
I'm trying to find the movie right now. That's what I'm trying to do.
The one where he plays chess with death. That's the Seventh Seal.
Oh, yes, it is the Seventh Seal. Yes,
but it sort of reminds me a little bit of like that sort of like Russian extremism in the beginning, where it's like these silhouetted hooded figures like mourning and walking against this like stark, Hollywood background. Like it like simple but very like dramatic sets. I thought was kind of very interesting, open to this. And then of course, like you're saying, like sitting there like, let's rob the grave. Woohoo!
It's so funny, because I saw a Vincent Price movie where they're doing something similar, but it's a comedy.
Right.
So there's a dark humor to it, where this, you're like, oh, that's just dark.
That
There's
is
not a lot
dark,
of
yo.
humor going on here.
Well, and it sort of lends with like a note I wrote is like there's no reason to like Dr. Frankenstein in this movie.
No, and you shouldn't though. You shouldn't though,
Yeah.
because his character's flawed in a billion different ways. He leaves his fiance because he's hellbent on this quest that, like, for lack of better word, mocks God, essentially.
Sure.
Like, no one can be the creator of life or whatever. To think that you're somehow above it is wild, ethically and morally, all of it.
Right.
And then to take this thing in and then just abandon it. And then when the repercussions come, it's all put on the creature. It's not put on him. There's no justice in what he's done. There's no consequences to his actions. He leaves unscathed. And that fundamentally, morally, is like kind of fucked up.
Yeah. So, that was one kind of thing I had is like, well, what's like keeping the viewer watching until Frankenstein arrives on the scene and, you start like falling in love with him before he immediately offs the girl, and then you're like, oh no, don't want you to do that. And then you're like, then you just don't know at that point. It's uncertain. So yeah, there's some interesting issues. Outside of that, I don't think I have much more to add. I think James Whale is kind of just, really did a great job with the movie.
He did. And I think it's like just happenstance that we came upon this, but I love that we're covering this during Pride. It kind of works out great because I feel like we definitely have to mention the fact that this was the wild fact to me. I knew he was gay. What I did not realize, though, was that he was openly gay in the 30s, which is something that is just not heard of, especially in like the Hollywood industry.
Yeah, so that's awesome to see and hear. I know you were saying some people believe it's possible it led to sort of a shortened career because people
probably
sort of canceled him for being gay. And so that's unfortunate. But I mean, what career he had, he made a very lasting impact. Frankenstein,
Bride of Frankenstein,
Man in the Iron Mask,
that's enough there. He had a prevalent career before, he did some theater again after. It's unfortunate his tale is not a super positive one at the end, but just mad respect for somebody that was willing to live their life authentically and not give a fuck about what anyone else thought. And it's hard enough for people to do that today. So to do that
He's like
in the 30s
a Frankenstein monster, just trying to be understood, just
minus the child and adult
minus
killing.
the murdering.
Minus the murdering, just to, and also he might have been a little bit more of a dick. But aside from that, though, if I had to deal with it, what he dealt with at the time, I don't think I'd be like the sweetest pie either, probably. Yeah. So we'll give him a lot of credit. He horror owes a lot to this guy, a lot to what he created, the people that he worked with, that he continued to work with and brought on to additional projects, which is something, again, that's more of an old school thing, but I do love seeing that when you get the same teams going into different projects together. That's so fucking cool.
So, what is the legacy of Frankenstein?
It's fucking everywhere. I mean, again, you don't have to have watched this movie to know this exact imagery that has been put out.
Yep.
The Bride of Frankenstein is especially iconic, considered one of the best sequels ever made, possibly better than the first. I've got to rewatch it back to back to make that definite. I'm not putting out my opinion yet. We'll cover it some other time. I'll put my opinion out there.
Yep.
But it's the work of this whole crew, Jack Pierce's makeup, Boris Karloff, James Whale. It's all of them bringing their best, but to create this thing that it's not going to die. It's not died thus far. And look at, we're in 2023 right now. It is alive. It's very much
we
alive.
Can't fucking kill it.
You can, but I mean, to make something like that and have it be so prevalent and parodied, how do you say that word?
Parodied.
It sounded really weird out of my mouth. Whatever the phrasing is, across multitude of platforms. This is like internationally known.
Yeah.
How can you beat something this iconic? I mean, what monster even is this iconic is my question. I don't think there is one. So
King Kong.
it's every...
You know, that's a good point. Like, as iconic as Frankenstein, maybe not. Maybe
super
not.
iconic, no question. But as iconic, this is the thing. I think this might... Dracula might be the only thing that's maybe even on the same level.
Yeah,
and even
Dracula,
I think you got to debate it there.
Yeah.
Which one is more iconic. But so despite it maybe not having the story that we would want as a more nuanced audience and anticipating like a little bit more, and again, things that thematically would have fit that were in the book that didn't make it to screen, despite all that, despite some wonky writing, under character development, it's a beautiful film. It's an iconic film. It's something that should be watched. It's an hour and like 10 minutes, people. Like, if you can't put time into that, I don't know what to tell you. So just my final thoughts are just saying this movie's fucking awesome. It deserves all the praise it gets. Yes, there's problems, but it deserves every positive thing it gets. That's my final say. What's your final? That was a long wrap up, but what's your final wrap up?
No, completely agree. If you haven't watched in a long time, please go rewatch it. You know, please like bring the new generation of horror fanatics in with movies like this. They have special places in our hearts, and everybody knows who these characters are. Everyone should understand why they are as iconic as they are today and where they come from.
Get to the origins, people. Always. Even if you like the remakes, go back to the OG. Always.
So I should probably read the book. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you know, until I finish my master's program, I won't be reading any books, but someday we'll get there. But yes, please go back to the originals, guys. The Universal movie monsters are a classic for a reason. They deserve it. And we have such a left turn from this movie to cover next time. I cannot wait, guys. We are really kicking Summer's butt here. We are going to be doing Sleepaway Camp. I cannot wait. CJ, I don't know at the time of filming. Have you seen this one yet?
No, I haven't.
I'm even more excited now. I'm even more excited. Guys, we are going to have a killer episode for you next. I can't wait.
Love it. So stick around. See you soon.
Bye, guys.